Here, you can go out first. Then.
Okay. Hop in first then?
Yeah.
Cool, there's your knockers. Where are we headed out to?
There?
Oh,
I think the
okay.
boat that's out there.
Got it.
Wild rice, or Manoomin in the Ojibwe language, is one of the Midwest's most sacred plants. But extreme weather, from record snow to destructive floods, is having tangible consequences on our state's water cycle and puts native vegetation at risk. That's why researchers and tribal nations are forging partnerships to protect and better understand the needs of Manoomin today. While these partnerships work to heal habitats, they also attempt to recenter Indigenous knowledge, slowly tending to old cultural wounds. So who is protecting Minnesota's wild rice? How is climate change affecting our delicate ecosystems? And can Manoomin survive in our changing state of water? Historians say the Anishinaabe people arrived in Minnesota in the early 1400s after making a great migration from the east. According to Ojibwe storytelling, it was here a vision told them to find their home in a place where the food floats on water. The Ojibwe recognized this as Manoomin, found growing near Lake Superior, where the people eventually settled. For centuries, the Ojibwe nurtured and relied on the plentiful grain to sustain them through the seasons. And today, Minnesota has more wild rice than any other state in the country. It can be found in more than 2,000 of our lakes and rivers. But scientists know that its relative abundance is ever-changing.
I have the honor of studying wild rice, and I work and think about it every day.
Maddie Nyblade is an earth and environmental science researcher at the University of Minnesota. She's a fifth-year PhD student studying the hydrological impacts of climate and land use change on wild rice.
Manoomin is facing a lot of threats, and one of those is from climate change, and so it's important to think about what we can do to support its resilience and growth across these ecosystems.
For years, Maddie has worked under a tribal university partnership. It's called the Kawe Gada Nana Gadawain Daman Manoomin Research Collaborative. That's Ojibwe for We Must First Consider Wild Rice. The collective was formed in response to the growing concern over declining wild rice harvests across the Midwest. The group makes it clear to separate itself from the wild rice breeding and genetics research program within the U's Agriculture Department, a historically controversial use of science on a culturally significant plant. As part of their mission statement, the collaborative promises to center tribal consultation and consent at every step. A key priority of the program is to help the public understand and respect Indigenous nations within the scientific practice.
Bonjour, hello, I think I'll introduce myself in the Ojibwe language. Minogi Jigabo Indigo, Gamasquabi Kang and Dunjba, Migazi and Dodame. My name is Bazil Panik. I come from the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe.
Tribal members and consultants like Bazil work alongside Maddie and her team to help answer big questions surrounding wild rice and species decline.
My part in this collaborative is to help share that data with the tribal members and tribal resource managers to help them fully understand Manoomin or wild rice. So offering those perspectives as well and melding the two together is a really important part of our studies on Manoomin or wild rice.
So more recently, the data is showing that climate change is impacting rice with the winters that are becoming warmer with less snow and less ice duration. We're seeing a negative impact on rice because it needs a really cold winter in order for the seeds to germinate. And we look at climate change and the trajectory of decreasing ice duration. And so we recognize that this is something that is likely already impacting rice and causing a decline and will continue to in the future.
The environmental impact, coupled with centuries of colonized land use, has disrupted important Manoomin habitats.
This landscape has been radically transformed by settlers. We've drained wetlands through ditching, tile drains. We've dammed areas. We've transformed wetlands into agricultural lands. We've deforested. So there's a ton of environmental change.
The tribal nations work in conjunction with researchers, sharing their own scientific data and providing traditional Indigenous knowledge. They use the wisdom of tribal elders to fill in gaps where science may come up empty.
The elders and the youth, though they may not have fancy degrees or letters behind their name, they do deserve to be recognized for their knowledge that they carry about wild rice. It's been really cool to bring up this Western scientific research question, and automatically they have an answer to it. And they start to talk more and bring up more memories when we discuss wild rice with them.
Working with tribal nations has fundamentally changed how we do research as scientists working in a mainstream academic institution.
To help build those connections, the collaboration joins other conservation leaders from around the Midwest at Indigenous rice camps. That includes the 1854 Treaty Authority, an intertribal organization that protects off-reservation hunting, fishing, and gathering rights in the lands ceded to the federal government.
So today we're in Nagaji-Winong, St. Louis River, and today we have a rice camp going on hosted by the 1854 Treaty Authority. Traditionally, rice camps were very important to the Ojibwe people.
But before attendees can begin processing the wild rice, they must first pick it. To protect Manoomin, Minnesota has outlawed harvesting before it's fully ripened. This is known as its green seed stage. Once the rice has matured, pickers can apply for a state permit to harvest.
It's very exciting for us because there hasn't been active harvesting in the estuary for a while. And a lot of that is because the rice here was nearly extirpated, and we've been working really hard since 2014 to bring rice back to the estuary.
David Graham Mason is a wild rice and habitat coordinator for the Wisconsin DNR. He's one of many state employees and educators working with the collaborative to save and protect the Manoomin through water management.
For me personally, it's about doing something in a place where I was born and raised that helps to make it better, not only for myself, but for future generations.
To harvest like the Ojibwe requires patience and fortitude. It also requires a flat-bottom canoe, something called flails, a push-pole, and a partner. The push-pole is used to move through dense wetlands, as wild rice habitats can be tricky to navigate. Once mature Manoomin stalks are located, harvesters use the two flails, or sticks, to knock seeds into the canoe. The seeds pile up on the floor, and during a good season, they'll often fill the entire boat. Once back on land, seeds are spread out on a clean surface to dry, and impurities are discarded by hand. Next, the crop is poured into a vessel where it will be parched in a kettle over a wood fire. Parching reduces the amount of moisture in the grain so it can be preserved and loosens the hull from the grain. Harvesters then place the grain in a bucket where they gently knead it or dance on it with their feet. This is known as hulling, and it removes the outer casing from the rice kernel. Finally, the rice is placed into baskets for winnowing. Here, the grains will be continuously tossed into the wind until the shell finally separates, leaving only shiny black grains of rice behind. A labor-intensive practice that yields big rewards.
We've been sort of transforming the way that we do restoration by not only doing the physical seeding and monitoring and vegetation management and that kind of thing, but also engaging with the community.
And while rice camps and other conservation programs are helping bridge cultural gaps and share valuable information, other action is still necessary to stop further species decline.
If we see wild rice continue to decline, we know it will have a big negative effect on the species, the ducks, the waterfowl that depend on it, and many other beings. as well as it indicates that our water systems are declining and really changing in ways that aren't sustainable for the future.
So what can you do to protect wild rice in Minnesota? If you live near or on a native shoreline, protecting those diverse ecosystems is priority number one. The message is simple. If Manoomin grows on your property, leave it be. Limit boat traffic and soil disruption, and if you're able, cut back competing vegetation to give them room to grow. As always, limit pollutants and runoff from your lawn to keep waterways clean. Education also plays a key role in advocating for Manoomin. It's important to understand tribal sovereignty and the sacred relationship between wild rice and your local tribes. This includes respecting tribal land and property, only harvesting in state and tribal-approved locations, and learning how to pick and process Manoomin sustainably.
We do regard Manoomin as our relative and as a gift that was given to us by the Creator and the Money Duke or the spirits. So in that gift, we have a responsibility to act in reciprocity with this being.
The state is also finding unique ways to help combat the effects of climate change on Manoomin and its waterways. This includes utilizing our often controversial dam systems. The Department of Natural Resources is also continuing to remove invasive species like the Asian carp that may cause harm to Manoomin habitats. And more recently, conservationists and scientists have been pushing for higher restrictions around sulfate mining.
This is something that we do have control over, of how we manage our tailings piles at mines and whether or not we mine to begin with. And so that's important. We recognize that rice is facing a lot of threats, and if we can reduce the contamination, we should be doing everything we can to do that.
People should really be tuned into what's happening with wild rice, because not only is wild rice really important from an ecological and cultural standpoint, but it's also sort of an indicator of the condition of the ecosystem itself. There's data out here, there's information stored out here that we need to pay attention to, because it's gonna help to identify where we're failing as a culture in terms of our environmental stewardship. But it will also help to inspire us to succeed.